Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Most Important Conversations Daily Meditations. We run these meditations Monday through Friday, and we begin each meditation with a talk, the theme of which is around liberation. And what we share is derived from our program, Whole Life Architecture, which is a weekly liberation and creativity container where participants are creating their life by design as opposed to merely tolerating their life by default. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks in the theme of liberation around suffering and how it is when we are not liberated that we end up experiencing suffering. And so these two things are very directly related. And we've been talking over the last couple of days about connecting to when you liberate yourself, you're able to connect yourself to a state known as compassion, not the emotional compassion, not like positive feelings or sympathetic feelings towards someone or something, but compassion as a state or a way of being where you are essentially in a neutral state, where you are unattached to the highs and lows of life, the lows being the suffering, the highs being the joy. And it doesn't mean that you don't experience highs and lows, but compassion allows us to approach life from a place of non-attachment to these highs and lows. So we can be fully ourselves and fully experiencing them in the moment without having to carry it to the next moment, including the joy. You know, we talk about something in whole life architecture known as emotional sobriety. And emotional sobriety is this ability to effectively be in this compassionate, neutral state, this state of being able to approach the isness of life, what is happening in life from a place of total acceptance, total non-resistance, and trust of self that allows you to step into that and be wholly and complete to yourself without having to try to angle yourself or edge yourself in a particular direction for approval or validation. You can be in each moment experiencing by practicing emotional sobriety, the highs and the lows, and be with the isness of the moment and not be taken out by it, not have to chase, not have to recreate that state. So emotional sobriety, one of the things is it acknowledges the fact that as human beings, we end up chasing emotional states. When things are really good, when we are experiencing joy or happiness, we want to recreate that. We can't just let the moment that arose from be its own unique thing. We want to drag it into the next moment and the next moment and keep it going. And conversely, when we experience a moment of suffering, we want to eliminate it as fast as possible and not actually be with the isness of that moment. So in both cases, both joy and suffering, humans have the exact same experience when they're not coming from a place of emotional sobriety. They want to either extend the time or shorten the time. But again, the relationship we have to time and the inability to be in this moment as it is, whole and complete, feeling what we're feeling, is where suffering really creeps in. We can be with moments that are unhappy and not have to be in a state of suffering. We may even experience a short burst of suffering, but don't need it to be a chronic, continuous thing. When we enter the phase of liberation, when we enter that as a state and we be that state as a way of being in the world, we don't have to constantly manage ourselves. We don't have to try to control ourselves because the trust of self that we have, the knowing, the deep knowing that gets developed through the work that we're doing in whole life architecture, for example, it gives you access to a part of yourself where you have full trust. And this is not something that is taught to us. On the contrary, most of us are raised from a place of total doubt. We're never enough. We're too much. We're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We don't know the right people, or we're too noisy. We're too out there. So you're not enough or too much. And growing up, that's how we're conditioned. And you cannot develop trust of self if you're too much and not enough, and you have that story running. So liberation liberates you from the story of I'm not enough or I'm too much. It gives you access to the I am perfect, whole, and complete as I am in this moment. And I am a becoming. I am always evolving. I am always growing. And that too, I have total approval and acceptance for, because that process is part of the trust of self. That I trust myself as I am, and I trust myself from a place of how I will evolve and who I will become in the evolving and the becoming. And all of this is only possible when we liberate ourselves, when we are living life from a place of liberation, and we liberate ourselves from all of this conditioning. And so the discomfort, however, that people will go through when they start the path of liberation is profound. And it's not one to be discounted or not considered. The experience or the appearance of the experience of suffering when we start to decondition ourselves is great because of the level of attachment that we have to who we had been and to how life had been and who people in our life had been and how they had showed up and what we made all of it mean. The creator in us, the creator within us, built stories and worlds around our way of being and our conditioning, and the people who approved of it and the people who reinforced it and the people who supported it. And so the first step in liberation is the ability to be with the discomfort and the effort that it's going to take to allow oneself to expand and to evolve and into a becoming. And this is going to require trust of self. You're going to have to trust yourself through the joys of meeting new people and having new experiences. And you're going to have to trust yourself through the suffering of letting go of that which does not align with who you authentically are. That could be people you have to let go of. It could be commitments that you have to let go of that you made from a place of your conditioning. It'll be stories that you have to let go of about your conditioned self and how it related to other people that you attracted as a result of your conditioning, other opportunities that you attracted. And so through the process of liberating oneself, immediately we are faced with the requirement of having to trust ourselves. How to trust oneself when you haven't been taught how to do it. Worrying won't help you. In fact, that would be the opposite of trusting oneself. The beginning of learning to trust oneself is to start to observe the chattering of the mind that is going on in the background whenever you step out of your conditioning and try something new, something that you maybe have always thought you wanted to do, but never had the courage because you didn't trust yourself and you were conditioned to believe that doing that thing, being that way, living that way was in your conditioning, right or wrong, good or bad, approved or unapproved of, and observing that chatter of judgment that starts to show up. You're trying something new or you're dropping something, and that that chattery mind kicks in. What are you doing? Are you crazy? What will people think? Will you succeed at this? Will you make money? Are you just wasting your life? Are you wasting your time? What if you die? All of these thoughts start rushing into your head when you start to liberate yourself and break from your conditioning. And so the practice of trust of self begins with your ability to step forward in spite of that chatter into the thing you feel drawn to, into the new action, into the interaction with the new person or people. Liberating yourself cannot be done without handling this conundrum of suffering and the ability to be with it and trust yourself through it. When you trust yourself, you're not worried or questioning your inner wisdom. You're able to, in the moment, act and do what is required despite the chattery mind. When you're liberated and you're trusting yourself, you do not need secondary opinions and information from the outside unless you choose to seek it out because it's in the service of what you are creating. But you don't not need anyone else's approval. This is also a difficult thing for people who have lived their lives being people pleasers, always seeking the approval of others to feel validated and confident. They transfer the confidence of the other person who approves of their action because they don't have enough confidence and trust of self in themselves. When you trust yourself through the process of liberation, you do what is required simply because the situation demands an aligned response from you. Aligned meaning your response is in integrity with who you are. It doesn't even necessarily mean that your response is the approved response from the outside. The approved response might be one thing, but your true, authentic response that's in integrity with who you are might be something totally different. And you have the ability to respond according to what's true for you, despite the external conditioning. And you trust yourself through the process. And you also will experience, until you don't, suffering in that moment. You'll have the negative mind chatter, the self-doubt, the self-critique, and you do it anyway. You learn to become like water with the situation, to be able to flow with the situation, to almost be an instrument through which the universe plays you in that situation. You're out of your head, you're out of your mind. One of the distinctions in whole life architecture is by going out of our mind, we find ourselves. Go out of your damn mind. Because what's in your mind is your conditioning. What's in your mind are all the rules and the regulations and the things that have kept you bound to a small life that isn't you. The path of compassion through liberation is the ability to be with one's whole and complete self and take each step through the path of unwinding the conditioning, which you will experience as suffering. You become a state of compassion for yourself, an opening, a clearing, a container where the true self can emerge. And it starts to almost naturally take you over It almost happens to you without you even having to do much work. Once you crack open and you start to access your true self, your authentic self, your power as a creator, once you liberate yourself from your conditioning, you better watch out because your life's about to change dramatically. Suddenly, people will relate to you differently. Suddenly, new opportunities will emerge you couldn't imagine. But it will require of you to be big enough, strong enough, confident enough, and have enough trust of self to step into them. Otherwise, they'll pass you by. And then the suffering is even worse. There's nothing worse than having the awareness that you are living a life by default, and you finally see it and you feel it viscerally, and yet you're still in your conditioning. You have realization that you're living a life by default, but you're trapped in your conditioning, but you see the possibilities available to you coming at you all around, possibilities you never saw before, opportunities you never had before. You see all of that, and yet you still are in your conditioning. That gap, that tension point, enormous suffering. The only way through it is through it, and you have to trust yourself to be able to do it. But as you take each trust of self step, you grow in strength. And eventually the momentum is at your back and it seems to be happening to you because you're no longer preoccupied with your self-indulgent ego defense. You're letting it drop. Every step you take, more drops of your conditioning and more liberation is revealed. Each step of liberation drops one step of conditioning, and the more steps you take, eventually you find yourself in a totally liberated and unconditioned place, and you wonder how the heck you got there. That's what's possible for everybody listening. So are you living a life by design or creating a life by default? And if your life is just a life you're tolerating by default, you're choosing that. You're not a victim. So as we move into our watcher observer meditation this morning, in the back of your mind, allow for your higher self to begin to show you those immediate areas where you are trapped in your conditioning, where it is thinking you, where it has you. Allow your higher self to share with you where you are fearful, and yet you are just tolerating a state of suffering because you're fearful to take that step that you know you need to take. In your heart of hearts, you know you need to take it. In your soul, not in your head and not because someone says so. We're talking about your authentic voice finally giving space to speak to you, encouraging you to become who you need to become, to drop what you need to drop, and to trust yourself through the suffering of letting go of your conditioning, while also you'll be experiencing the joy of step by step attaining more liberation. Where are you in that resistance? Don't actively think about it, but allow that question to ponder in the back of your mind as we move into our meditation, getting into a fixed upright position, seated, comfortable, taking a few deep breaths. And allowing your mind to open, to expand, to just be. Allowing your emotions to rise up and fall. allowing your thoughts to drift in and out of your awareness. Your mind is just going to think. That's just what it does. 30,000 thoughts a day run through our mind. We can't remember most of them. 98% of what you thought yesterday, you're going to think today. It's all noise. When you become liberated and you live a life of liberation, you will be the master of your thinking. The noise will quiet down. The 30,000 thoughts might become 20,000, might become eventually 10. Eventually, you think on command as a master. You think when it's required to think. And otherwise, you have an openness of mind and an openness of being, an openness of heart. You're not cluttered up and gummed up with all of the chatter. But for now, let your thoughts drift in and out of your awareness. Let your mind think. That's just what it does. You do not have to chase them. You don't have to chase those thoughts. You don't have to attend to them. You don't have to chase your emotions. You can feel them and let them move in and out like waves in the ocean. For the next few minutes, you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of them, the watcher of them. And you're open and receptive to what your higher self would have to say about where you are gripping and squeezing the life out of life, beholden to your conditioning, trapped in your conditioning. This is like the layers of the onion. The more we inquire, the more we find more conditioning, the more we inquire, and it keeps going like that until eventually we get to the no thing center. So have that in the back of your mind this morning. What does your higher self want to reveal to you? And I'll see you all in a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Reconnecting to the world without from the world within. Reconnecting to a world of either possibility or a world of conditioning, depending on your perception and whether you choose to be a creator or just continue to consume the world the way that it is, your world the way that it is. None of us are victims. We all are always at choice, and everything in our life has been created by us, at least the conditions which led to the things we experience. We can choose to either stand in our power as a creator, to create something that is in alignment with us, to create a life that makes us come alive, or we can continue to tolerate the conditioned life that has given us what we have at the moment. Perhaps your higher self revealed some more areas in your life where you are trapped in conditioning, where you are resistant to change, where you are avoidant of standing in your power and trusting yourself to be what is required in that moment. Perhaps you even heard some negative chatter in your mind. Don't judge any of it, just use it all as data and feedback in your evolution towards greater and greater liberation. And today, the invitation as you go about your day is to try one time in one situation where you feel the pull to behave or to act according to your conditioning, but then on the other side, you feel the opening to act in a way that aligns with yourself and choose yourself. Don't abandon yourself. Choose yourself in that moment and see what it feels like to go against the grain of your conditioning. You will experience some level of suffering, some level of nervousness, anxiety, but you are building self-trust in the process. And for each step away from your conditioning you take, you are taking a step towards your liberation to connect more wholly and completely to yourself and to create a life based on that. So just try that today. Have an experience of it. You don't have to blow up your life, but you can start to build and titrate your capacity for more and more liberated ways of being. Wishing you all a wonderful day, and we will continue our meditation.